All of our lives, we are in need, and others are in need of us. Wise, wise words. Did you know that the Latin root to the word religion are re and ligio? Re meaning again or back, and ligio meaning link or ligament. So religion meaning tying back together or reconnecting. And I know that these root meanings don't always hold true in our common day definitions of words. But for me and my understanding of Unitarian Universalism, this reconnecting is exactly how I understand my faith. It is my opportunity to reconnect to my deeper self, to reconnect with people close to me, and to hold my values and principles close to their hearts as well. It is an opportunity to reconnect with the world around me and with those who suffer and who hold joy within it. My Unitarian Universalist faith allows me to reconnect to the unity of our universe. It allows me to reconnect to all of the things that the hustle and bustle of life keep me disconnected from. There's a quote that I really love that describes this disconnection. It comes from Parker Palmer, a Quaker theologian, who uses terminology that really works for me, probably because I'm a prairie girl, up until 3 years ago anyways. Palmer states, "There was a time when farmers on the Great Plains, at the first sign of a blizzard, would run a rope from the back door of their houses out to the barn. They all knew stories of people who had wandered off and been frozen to death, having lost sight of their home in a whiteout while still in their own backyards. Today, we live in a blizzard of another sort. It swirls around us as economic injustice, ecological ruin, physical and spiritual violence, and their inevitable outcome, which is war. It swirls within us as fear and frenzy, greed and deceit, and indifference to the suffering of others. We all know stories of people who have wandered off into this madness and been separated from their own souls, losing their moral bearings and even their mortal lives. The lost ones come from every walk of life. They are clergy and corporate executives, politicians and people on the streets, celebrities and school children. Some of us fear that we or those we love will become lost in the storm. Some of us are lost at this moment and are trying to find our way home. Some are lost without knowing it, and some of us are using the blizzard as a cover while cynically exploiting its chaos for private gain." Palmer goes on to say, "My own experience of the blizzard, which includes getting lost in it more often than I would like to admit, tells me that the soul's order can never be destroyed. It may be obscured by the whiteout. We may forget or deny that its guidance is close at hand, and yet we are still in the soul's backyard, with chance after chance to regain our bearings." Palmer really explains this idea of disconnection well. Our soul is lost in the turmoil, in the blizzard of our bodies, of our minds, of our world, but it is still there. It is still whole, and we just need to spend time reconnecting to it. And if the word soul does not hold weight for you, Perhaps the concept of deepest self or inner child or divine self could work. Perhaps your oneness with the world will allow you to understand what Palmer means when he uses the word soul, or just the idea of reconnecting to the wholeness of being human. And if religion, religio, is supposed to help us reconnect with ourselves, is supposed to allow us to reconnect with our soul. And if Unitarian Universalism has done this for me, has allowed me to reconnect, what does that actually look like? I am teaching the starting point class again over the next few weeks, starting tomorrow night. And it is a class that introduces people to the spiritual practices of Unitarian Universalism. It highlights and shows the journey that Unitarian Universalists walk along throughout their spiritual lives. It talks very specifically about the idea of reconnecting. How are we to reconnect with all that we have become disconnected with in this world? With all that this society has forced us to disconnect from. The Spiritual Point curriculum states, and I believe that there are 3 paths, 3 journeys, the roads on which we all journey within Unitarian Universalism, 3 lifelines that can help pull us back, help lead us to our true selves, help reconnect us to our wholeness. These 3 paths are: 1, the path of listening to our deepest selves. 2, the path of opening up to life's gifts. And 3, the path of serving needs greater than our own. In the storm of life, as we travel the road through blizzards, it is these 3 lifelines that attempt to reconnect us to the wholeness of being human. A recognition of the disconnection from our deepest selves, a disconnection from the giftedness of life, and a disconnection from the needs that are greater than our own. Not only is Unitarian Universalism offering 3 paths towards reconnecting to our wholeness of human being, but as it is shown here, there are 3 practices by which to engage in this spiritual work of reconnection: listening, opening, and serving. So the starting point curriculum asks you to start considering these journeys and the spiritual exercise that helps you move down these paths. So I hope I haven't lost you yet. Once again, the 3 paths or the 3 journeys of Unitarian Universalism are listening to our deepest selves, opening up to life's gifts, and serving needs that are greater than our own. And the 3 spiritual exercises that are linked to these paths are listening, opening, and serving. What do these journeys and practices look like? Journey groups, or what this congregation has historically called soul matter groups. Within these groups, we have the opportunity to practice listening, opening, and serving. And of course, there are many different ways in which we can practice each of these exercises. By attending worship services, you are being asked to listen deeply and consider being open to new ideas, new forms of truth and understanding with the world. By attending committee or board meetings, or working to reopen the church in a safe way, or helping create worship services, you are all offering service to the community and to the world. Our opening words this morning from Christine Robinson and Alicia Hawkins talk about this practice of listening as well. The idea of listening deeply as part of our spiritual practices. They say, We give ourselves permission to tell thick stories, and we practice thick listening. While nearly everybody can tell a thick story, especially when they talk about themselves, thick listening is a new skill which we have to practice. When we speak from our hearts and talk about ourselves, saying what has happened to us and how we believe and feel and think, we find not only that we have gained what we have gained from hearing ourselves, but that our stories have been interested to others in the group. Telling a thick story feels risky, but once we decide to take the risk, it is easy to do well. Everybody can do a good job telling their own story. Many find that knowing there will be no arguments, no probing questions, and no helpful comments to which they will have to respond to gives them the courage to share things that they would otherwise keep to themselves. It is not at all uncommon in a soul to soul group to hear after a particularly wonderful story, "I've never talked about that before." Our journey groups offer us the ability to tell thick stories and to practice thick listening or deep listening. It is so much like the lyrics from our hymn this morning. When our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When we tell our story from deep inside and we listen with a loving mind, and we hear our voices in each other's words, then our heart is in a holy place. By creating this space in which we are able to share deeply and listen deeply to other people's sharings, we are creating this space for each of us to reconnect, religio with ourselves. We are creating the sacred spaces in which we are able to reconnect with our own thoughts, our own values, our own integrity, and our own understanding of the sacred. These spaces are where the juiciness of our faith happens, at least for me. Anybody who belongs to one of our journey groups or soul matter groups will tell you that I have often said how very important it is for me to be able to participate in these small groups. Being able to witness other people's reconnections, or to be able to hold the space in which these reconnections can take place, is why I became a minister. Being able to help people create the practices of reconnecting with themselves, being able to offer the space in search for one's own truth and meaning, being able to witness someone struggling with the work of stepping more fully into their humanity has been sacred work for me. As a matter of fact, I believe that it was in one of my groups last month where I actually said, creating and going to worship services is just the icing on the cake. The real work of being Unitarian Universalist happens in our small groups. It is an interesting process to be in small groups with other people. The way that we have our journey groups set up. At the beginning of the month, I send out resource material that relates to our theme. And then we spend the 2 or 3 weeks sitting with the material, working through our own thoughts about it, and listening deeply to our own soul's murmurings. Much like in our story this morning, we give ourselves time with the material, breathe into our thoughts and our reflections, and come prepared to say outside what we have been thinking inside. We are unraveling the great, huge topic of knowing ourselves, one theme, one question, one spiritual practice at a time. And we share that moment of peace with others. We share the practice of listening deeply to ourselves and listening deeply to others and reconnecting. We need one another. We need one another in the times of struggle and the times of joy. We need one another when we mourn, and we need one another when we have accomplished a great success. We need one another to listen to our soul's deepest ponderings. And this is what Unitarian Universalism has done for me, and what I hope to offer back to the world. A faith, a religion, a reconnection to the parts of ourselves that we are disconnected from. Rachel Naomi Remen puts it perfectly when she wrote, "It is often through the quality of our listening and not the wisdom of our words that we are able to affect the most profound changes in the people around us. When we listen, we offer with our attention an opportunity for wholeness. Our listening creates sanctuary for the homeless parts within the other person. That which has been denied, unloved, and devalued by themselves and others. That which is hidden. In this culture, the soul and the heart too often go homeless. Listening creates a holy silence." Though I did not hear this quote until a few years ago while here in Kelowna, this is the faith that I want to live into. This is the biggest part of why I became a minister. Companioning with people, walking alongside them on their journey of reconnecting. And I believe that we can create a community of deep listening, a community where we create space for the homeless parts within one another. Journey groups create the opportunity to support one another in this way. They create the space that allows us to reconnect with ourselves, with those around us, with our understanding of the divine, and with the world. And if we can learn this practice of deep listening within our journey groups, perhaps we can also use deep listening in all of the other spaces we gather, like the Social Justice Summit this afternoon, or at the committee meetings that you attend, or in the boardroom and business meetings at your work, or at your next family event. Perhaps if we practice and create a faith of deep listening, we will be able to create a culture of deep listening and spread the practice farther. Let us make it so.